My mom lost her job and wanted to move in. I said no. She found a new BF who offered her a place. What happened next shocked me. I'm Ryan, 28M, and I've been with my girlfriend Abby, 26F, for about 3 years now. We met during our final year of college at a campus volunteer event. I was helping set up a booth for the environmental club, and Abby was there representing the student government. We got to talking about our shared interest in sustainability, and before I knew it, we'd spent the whole afternoon chatting. After that, we started bumping into each other more often on campus. We'd grab coffee between classes or study together in the library. It felt easy and natural, like we'd known each other for years. When we graduated, we both landed jobs in the same city, me at a renewable energy startup and Abby at a nonprofit focused on urban development. It just made sense to move in together. Our apartment isn't fancy, but it's ours. We've filled it with secondhand furniture we've fixed up together and plants we're trying, sometimes successfully, to keep alive. In the evenings, we often cook dinner together, experimenting with new recipes or perfecting old favorites. It's a peaceful life, one I never thought I'd have growing up. To understand why, I need to give you some background on my childhood. My mom, Lydia, 50F, had me when she was just 22. She dropped out of community college when she found out she was pregnant, and my biological father split as soon as he heard the news. I never met him, and Mom doesn't talk about him much. We struggled a lot in those early years. We lived in a tiny studio apartment, and Mom worked multiple jobs to keep us afloat. I spent a lot of time with our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, while Mom was at work. Mrs. Gonzalez taught me Spanish and how to make the best chocolate chip cookies. She was like the grandmother I never had. When I was 5, Mom met Dave, 45M, at the diner where she worked. He was a regular customer, always sitting in her section and leaving big tips. I remember Mom coming home excited after their first date, saying she felt like a teenager again. They got married within a year. At first, things seemed better. Dave had a steady job as a construction foreman, and we moved into a nicer 2-bedroom apartment. I got my own room for the first time, and Mom was able to cut back on her work hours. She even started talking about maybe going back to school. But as I got older, I started noticing problems. Dave would often come home late, smelling of alcohol. He and Mom would get into screaming matches that lasted for hours. I'd hide in my room, trying to block out the noise with my headphones, but I could still hear the crash of things being thrown. When I was 12, Mom got pregnant with my half-sister, Margaret. I thought maybe the baby would make things better, but it only seemed to make Dave angrier. He'd complain about the cost of diapers and formula, saying Mom should have been more careful. More than once, I heard him mutter about how he didn't sign up for this. As a teenager, I tried to spend as much time away from home as possible. I got a part-time job at a local grocery store, stocking shelves and bagging groceries. I joined every after-school club I could, debate team, chess club, even the school band, despite being terrible at playing the trumpet. Anything to avoid being in that toxic environment. I made some good friends during this time, particularly my best friend Alex. His family life wasn't great either. His parents were going through a messy divorce, so he understood what I was going through. We'd spend hours at the local park, talking about our dreams of getting out of our small town and making something of ourselves. The breaking point came when I was 17. I came home from work one day to find Mom crying on the couch, a bruise forming on her cheek. Dave had hit her during an argument about money. Apparently, he'd gambled away a chunk of their savings. I lost it. I confronted Dave, and we got into a physical altercation. I was no match for him physically, but I managed to land a few punches before he threw me against the wall. The neighbors heard the commotion and called the cops. Dave was arrested, and Mom finally agreed to press charges. Mom kicked Dave out after that, but the damage was done. She fell into a deep depression, barely leaving her room for weeks. I had to take care of Margaret, who was only 5 at the time, and keep the household running while trying to finish high school. It was one of the toughest periods of my life. I'd get up early to get Margaret ready for kindergarten, go to school, rush to my job at the grocery store, then come home to make dinner and help Margaret with her homework. Most nights, I was up late trying to finish my own schoolwork. Despite everything, I managed to keep my grades up. My guidance counselor, Mr. Thompson, was a huge help. He stayed late many evenings to help me with college applications and scholarship essays. When I got a full ride to a college in another state, he was almost as excited as I was. I felt guilty about leaving Margaret, but I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Mom seemed to improve a bit after I left, getting a job as a receptionist at a local doctor's office and starting to date again. She'd call me every Sunday, filling me in on Margaret's latest achievements at school and her own tentative steps back into the dating world. College was a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I felt like I could focus on myself and my future. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. That's not to say it was always easy. There were plenty of nights when I lay awake, worried about Mom and Margaret back home. But I knew I had to keep pushing forward. Fast forward to now. I've built a good life for myself with Abby. We both have stable jobs that we enjoy, and we're saving up to buy a house. I still keep in touch with Mom and Margaret, visiting a couple times a year and calling regularly. Margaret's in high school now, A bright kid with dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Mom's been working at the same doctor's office for years now, having worked her way up to office manager. Last month, Mom called me out of the blue, crying. The doctor she worked for was retiring and closing the practice. She'd lost her job and was struggling to pay rent. She asked if she could move in with me and Abby just until she gets back on her feet. I was torn. On one hand, she's my mother and she's struggled so much in life. I know how hard it can be to find yourself suddenly unemployed. On the other hand, I've worked hard to create a peaceful, stable life for myself, and I'm worried about how having her around might affect that. Plus, our apartment isn't very big, we don't even have a spare room. I talked to Abby about it, and she was hesitant but said she'd support whatever decision I made. After a lot of thought, I called Mom back and told her I couldn't take her in. I offered to help her look for job openings and even send some money to tide her over, but I just couldn't have her living with us. Mom didn't take it well. She accused me of abandoning her, saying I owed her for all the sacrifices she made raising me. She brought up how she stood by me when I needed her during my rebellious teenage years, conveniently forgetting that my behavior was a reaction to the chaos at home. She even said that if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been able to go to college and have the life I have now. I stood my ground, but now I'm feeling guilty. Margaret called me, saying I'm being selfish and that family should always come first. Some of my cousins have been posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about ungrateful children and how some people forget where they came from. Abby says I made the right choice, but I can't help second-guessing myself. Am I being selfish? Should I have found a way to make it work? Did I do the right thing? Ida for refusing to let my mom move in with us? Edit, thank you all for your responses. I'm reading through them and will post an update soon. Update 1, it's been about a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation. After my initial refusal, Mom kept calling and texting, alternating between guilt-tripping and apologizing. She'd bring up memories from my childhood, like the time she worked extra shifts for weeks to buy me a bike for my 10th birthday, or how she always made sure I had new clothes for the first day of school even when money was tight. It was hard not to feel guilty, but I maintained my boundary. I continued to offer help with her job search, spending my lunch breaks looking up openings and emailing her leads. I also reached out to my Aunt Carol, Mom's younger sister, to see if she could offer any support. Aunt Carol and Mom have had a complicated relationship over the years. They were close as kids, but drifted apart in adulthood. Aunt Carol never approved of Dave, which caused some tension. However, she agreed to check in on Mom and Margaret. About 2 weeks ago, I got a call from Margaret. She was upset and told me that Mom had started dating a new guy, Eric, 55M, who she met at a local bar. Apparently, Eric had offered to let Mom move in with him, even though they'd only known each other for a few weeks. Margaret was worried because Eric seemed off to her, but Mom wasn't listening to her concerns. Margaret told me that Eric had been spending a lot of time at their apartment, and she felt uncomfortable around him. She said he made inappropriate comments about her appearance and tried to act like he was her dad. When she told Mom about this, Mom accused her of being jealous and trying to ruin her happiness. I tried calling Mom to talk about it, but she brushed off my worries. She said Eric was a real gentleman and that at least he was willing to help her, unlike me. That stung, but I tried to stay calm and asked her to be careful. I reminded her of her past relationships and urged her not to rush into anything. Mom got defensive and hung up on me. For the next week, I was a ball of anxiety. I couldn't focus at work, constantly checking my phone for messages from Margaret. Abby noticed my distraction and suggested we take a trip home to check on things in person. I was reluctant at first, worried about how Mom would react, but I knew Abby was right. Last weekend, we made the 4-hour drive to my hometown. We decided to make it a surprise visit, not giving Mom a chance to put on a show or hide anything. When we got to Mom's apartment, I was shocked by what we found. The place was a mess, nothing like the tidy home Mom usually kept. There were empty beer cans and takeout containers everywhere. Eric was passed out on the couch, snoring loudly. Mom answered the door, looking disheveled and smelling of alcohol. She seemed surprised to see us but invited us in with a forced cheerfulness that didn't reach her eyes. We managed to get her alone for a few minutes while Eric was still passed out. That's when she broke down. She admitted that Eric had a drinking problem and had been verbally abusive, calling her names and putting her down. He'd lost his own apartment due to not paying rent, which is why he'd been staying with her. Mom said she felt trapped, like she had no other options. She was too embarrassed to ask family for help after how she'd acted with me. Seeing Mom like this brought back a flood of memories from my childhood. It was like history was repeating itself, and I couldn't stand by and watch it happen again. After a long discussion, we came up with a plan. I called Aunt Carol, and despite their past issues, she agreed to let Mom stay with her temporarily. Abby and I helped Mom pack up her essential belongings while Eric was still passed out. We left a note explaining that she was leaving, and I made sure to be there when she told Eric in case things got ugly. Eric didn't take it well when he woke up and found out what was happening. He started yelling, calling Mom all sorts of names and accusing her of using him. Having me there seemed to deter him from getting physical, but it was a tense situation. We got mom safely to Aunt Carol's place, and she's been there for the past week. Now, we're working on a longer-term plan. I've been helping mom apply for jobs, and she has a promising interview next week at another medical office. Margaret is looking into affordable apartments in her area so mom can be closer to her. We're also considering the possibility of mom moving to the city where I live if she can find a job here. I'm glad we were able to help mom out of a bad situation, but I still believe I made the right choice in not having her move in with us. This experience has shown me that she needs more help than Abby and I can provide on our own. She needs a support system and professional help to break this cycle of toxic relationships. Mom has agreed to start attending support group meetings for people who've been in abusive relationships. She's also promised to be more careful about who she dates in the future. I know it won't be easy for her to change patterns that have been ingrained for decades, but I'm hopeful that she's taking steps in the right direction. Our relationship is still a bit strained, but I think we're moving in a better direction. Mom has apologized for trying to guilt-trip me and says she understands why I couldn't have her move in. We're having more honest conversations about our past and our feelings than we ever have before. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future, but I know we have a long road ahead. I'm committed to supporting mom in healthy ways, but I also need to maintain boundaries to protect my own mental health and my relationship with Abby. I'll post another update if anything significant happens. Again, thank you all for your support and advice. It really helped me navigate this difficult situation. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments in the situation with my mom. The good news is that mom did get the job she interviewed for. It's an administrative position at a local community college, and while it doesn't pay as much as her previous job, it's stable and has good benefits. She seems to enjoy the work and has made some friends among her coworkers. There's even a possibility for advancement if she decides to pursue further education. With her new income, mom was able to rent a small apartment near Margaret. It's not fancy, but it's clean and in a safe neighborhood. Margaret and I helped her move in and get settled. It was actually a nice bonding experience for all of us. We spent a weekend painting the walls, assembling furniture, and arranging mom's belongings. It reminded me of the good times we had when I was younger, before things got complicated with Dave. Mom has been consistently attending her support group meetings and says they've been really helpful. She's started to recognize some of the patterns in her past relationships and is working on building her self-esteem. She's also reconnected with some old friends she had lost touch with during her relationship with Dave. Last week, she went out for coffee with her high school best friend, whom she hadn't seen in over a decade. Margaret seems happier too. She's relieved to have mom close by and in a better state of mind. They've been spending more quality time together, with mom attending Margaret's school events and helping her prepare for college applications. Margaret's even considering applying to the community college where mom works, which could qualify her for reduced tuition. However, not everything has been smooth sailing. About a month ago, Eric started calling and texting mom again. He apologized for his behavior and swore he had changed. He said he'd started going to AA meetings and gotten a new job. Mom was tempted to give him another chance, saying everyone deserves forgiveness and that maybe this time would be different. This led to a pretty heated argument between us. I reminded her of how Eric had treated her and how dangerous it could be to let him back into her life. I brought up Dave and how he'd made similar promises that never panned out. Mom accused me of being judgmental and not understanding how lonely she was. She said it was easy for me to judge from my perfect life with Abby. For a few days, things were tense between us. I was worried she might cut off contact or, worse, go back to Eric. But then something unexpected happened. Margaret called me, excited. She had been going through some old boxes in her closet and found a journal mom had kept when Margaret was a baby. In it, mom had written about her hopes and dreams for herself and her children. She wrote about wanting to go back to school, maybe become a teacher. She talked about her desire to travel and see the world. She also wrote about her fears of staying with Dave and how she wished she could be stronger for us. There was an entry that particularly stood out. Mom had written about a day when Dave was at work, and she'd taken me and baby Margaret to the park. She described how happy and peaceful she felt, watching me push Margaret on the baby swing, and how she wished every day could be like that. She wrote about her dream of someday having a home filled with love and laughter, without fear or anger. Margaret shared this with Mom, and it seems to have had a profound effect. Mom called me, crying, and apologized for lashing out. She said reading her own words from so long ago made her realize how far she had strayed from the person she wanted to be. She admitted that she had been considering giving Eric another chance, but reading the journal made her remember why that would be a mistake. Since then, Mom has blocked Eric's number and seems more committed than ever to improving her life. She's even talking about taking some classes at the community college where she works, possibly working towards a degree in education. It's the first time in years I've heard her talk about her own dreams and aspirations. I'm proud of the progress Mom is making, but I'm also trying to manage my expectations. I know there will likely be more bumps in the road ahead. Recovery isn't linear, and old habits can be hard to break. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about our family's future. Abby has been incredibly supportive through all of this. She's even offered to help Mom with her resume and job applications if she decides to pursue teaching in the future. I'm grateful to have her in my life and feel like this experience has brought us closer together. We've had some deep conversations about family, responsibility, and what we want for our future. As for me, I'm learning to balance supporting my mom while still maintaining healthy boundaries. It's not always easy, but I'm getting better at it. I've started seeing a therapist to work through some of my own issues from childhood, which has been really helpful. I'll post another update if there are any significant changes. Thank you all again for your support and advice throughout this journey. Update 3, it's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts on this situation. Mom has continued to make positive strides in her life. She's still working at the community college and has started taking classes towards an associate's degree in education. It's been challenging for her to balance work and school, but she seems more motivated than I've seen her in years. She often calls me to share something interesting she learned in class or to ask for help with an assignment. It's a role reversal that took some getting used to, but I enjoy being able to support her in this way. Our relationship has improved significantly. We talk regularly, and there's a new openness and honesty between us that wasn't there before. Mom has even started to open up about her relationship with my biological father and some of the struggles she faced as a young single mother. These conversations aren't always easy, but they've helped me understand her better and heal some old wounds. Margaret and I have grown closer through all of this as well. She's now in her senior year of high school and has been accepted to a state university with a good veterinary program. Mom and I are both so proud of her. We've been making an effort to have regular family dinners, which has been really nice. It's like we're finally becoming the family I always wished we could be. There was one hiccup about 2 months ago. Dave, my former stepfather, reached out to Mom on social media. He said he had gone through rehab and wanted to apologize for his past behavior. Mom was unsure how to respond and asked for my advice. After a lot of discussion, Mom decided to meet Dave in a public place, with Margaret and me there for support. The meeting was tense but civil. Dave did seem genuinely remorseful, but Mom made it clear that while she accepted his apology, she had no interest in rekindling their relationship or having him in her life. I was proud of how Mom handled the situation. It showed how much she's grown and how she's prioritizing her own well-being and that of her children. As for me and Abby, we're doing great. We recently got engaged and are starting to plan our wedding. Mom is thrilled and has been enthusiastically helping with the preparations. She and Abby have even started having regular girls' nights together, which warms my heart. Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm glad I stood my ground about not having Mom move in with us. It was a difficult decision, but I think it ultimately led to better outcomes for everyone involved. Mom was forced to confront some hard truths about her life and relationships, and she's emerged stronger for it. I've learned a lot through this experience too. About setting boundaries, about the complexity of family relationships, and about the importance of addressing issues head-on rather than avoiding them. I've also learned that it's possible to support someone without sacrificing your own well-being. There's still work to be done, of course. Mom is still working on her degree and building her confidence. Margaret is nervous about starting college. And I'm still learning how to navigate these new family dynamics. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're all moving in the right direction. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. Your perspectives helped me navigate some really tough decisions. I won't be posting any more updates, but I wanted to let you know that things have turned out well. Here's to hoping they continue on this positive path.